So yeah, so again, clearly, your channel is one that I highly recommend people checking out. And so tell me, what is your inspiration behind your topic choices? I mean, it was probably different in the beginning than it is now, but I'd love to have some insight into that.
Well, let's go all the way back to the beginning. So, at the very, very beginning, my inspiration was my coworkers. I used to work in a genetics lab doing statistics for my coworkers. They were all what we call wet bench researchers, meaning they do experiments that involve wet things as opposed to dry things. A computer is a dry thing, but they're like measuring small volumes of liquids and from one tube and squeezing them into other tubes. So they did all these experiments and they had me doing the statistics. And it's an academic lab, and that means there's new people coming and going basically every 6 months, sometimes even shorter periods than that. And I would do the statistics, but I didn't want them to think what I was doing was magic. And so what I did is I started this little like it wasn't really a seminar series, but we had a lab meeting every Friday, and part of that lab meeting I would do a little stat chat and like stats corner or something like that. And I'd try to teach my coworkers the statistics that I was using on their research. So it was real obvious, like what to talk about because it was like they'd say, "Hey, Starmer, can you do a t-test?" And I'm like, "Yes, I can, and I can teach you about it." And so I do those little things, but like I said, it's an academic lab, and every 6 months there's new people, and I was like, I could repeat myself every 6 months for the rest of my life, or I could just record a YouTube video and put it online. And then, like when someone in the lab needs to learn about R squared, they just go to the link and they learn about R squared. And it's the same presentation I would have given anyways. And so if you watch the early videos, they're all about mice because it was a mouse genetics lab. And so all I do is talk about mice and like things you can do with mice. Um, but to be honest, when I was starting out, I wasn't, the channel I thought was going to be I wasn't intending for it to be private, but I just figured it was going to be private because, like, let's be honest, back then I was like, who wants to watch a video about R squared other than someone in dire straits? I just assumed no one would watch that kind of stuff. And and I remember at the time,
You think members of the band Dire Straits are really keen to know the proportion of variance?
yeah,
Uh,
Mark Knopfler's dying to learn about R squared.
like, oh, finally, R squared with mice. This is what we've
Exactly.
been waiting for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he texts me like 5 times a day. It's like, when's it coming out? And it drives me crazy. I'm like, come on, you got to wait for it. But anyways, and I'll be honest. In the first year, the only people that watched my stuff were people in my lab, and that was fine because that's who it was for. But I'll be honest. I've never. I'm not like some like Zen guru who's just like, I just want to do it for the I had some fantasies about people watching my videos, and I think, wouldn't that be cool if people watched them? But I had a friend of mine who's like, he was starting a guitar channel, and it was like blowing up, and I was like, dang, if only I was like teaching guitar stuff.
Only I can play the guitar. All I've got is this tenor guitar, and no one likes listening to it.
No one wants to learn how to play the tenor guitar. So I was like, man, that's the way to do it. He's got the channel, and I'll always just have this little tiny channel, and it's fine because it spared me the agony of having to present the same material every 6 months. And so it served its purpose, but it did, in the end, it kind of blew up, despite my best efforts to make it sound obscure, going, well, let's weigh another mouse. And I've got all these business people watching it now. They're like, could you use some business examples instead of mice? And I'm like, well,
You got a mouse with a suit.
exactly.
Goes to the
A
office
mouse goes to Wall
and
Street.
weighs himself.
Yeah. So that's how it started out. And anyways, to go back to the original question, what was my inspiration? The inspiration for that was my coworkers. It started out that way. And then I was at a conference once, and this guy who was also at the conference, and he was a chemist, and he goes, "You're in statistics, right?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do you know anything about random forests?" And I said, "No." And he said, yeah, because I just read a paper and it had a random forest and I have no idea what it means. And I said, I don't either. Uh, but I was like, but I'm kind of curious. And so when I came home from that conference, I researched uh, uh, random forests, and random forests are made from decision trees. And so I had to research decision trees. And I was like, I'll tell you what, I'm going to make a video on decision trees. And that was the start of StatQuest transformation from being all stats all the time to being some stats with a lot of machine. I think I've got more machine learning videos than I have stats.